Welcome back to GLASP Deep Dive, short takes on the long reads worth your attention. I'm Hope.
And I'm Adam. Today on the show, AEO versus GEO, the two new flavors of search optimization that everyone is mashing into one bucket.
This one's been everywhere lately because almost every marketing thread on LinkedIn is suddenly arguing about which acronym to use. I wanted to figure out if there's actually a real difference or if it's just rebrand season.
There's a real difference. Let's get into it.
Okay, the piece opens on one number that reframes the whole conversation. 72% of Google queries now end without a click. That's from SparkToro's Q1 2026 study.
And the baseline before AI overviews was already around 60, per earlier Pew Research and SparkToro work.
Which is the part people miss. AI overviews didn't invent zero-click. The trend was already running. They just pushed it past a tipping point.
Right. And those overviews now show on roughly 55% of searches. So most of the time, Google is answering the question right on the results page.
So if a query lands inside that 55% and the user doesn't click, you're effectively being read without being visited.
And the user often doesn't even register that you were the source.
Which breaks the old playbook. Ranking page 1 used to mean a click. Now, it often means being read inside a generated answer, with no visit, no session, nothing in analytics.
And while everyone was arguing about Google, a second surface quietly opened on top of it.
ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, all synthesizing answers from a totally different mix of sources. So we now have two surfaces and two disciplines. Let's define them. What does AEO mean?
Answer engine optimization. It targets the extraction layer. Featured snippets, people also ask, knowledge panels, voice readouts, and now AI overviews. The job is to be the source the machine quotes verbatim.
So it's the box at the top, the thing that lifts your sentence and shows it directly.
Exactly.
And GEO?
Generative engine optimization. The surface isn't a box. It's a paragraph the model writes from scratch. You're not optimizing a single page. You're optimizing the model's internal map of your topic and brand.
So AEO is basically, machine, please copy this sentence. And GEO is, machine, please remember my brand exists when someone asks about this category.
That's a clean way to put it. And the tactics for each don't really overlap.
Let's start with AEO then. If I'm an SEO person from 2022, what's familiar and what's new?
Familiar. Structured data, question-led headers, clean author bios. New. Lead with the answer.
Meaning 40 to 60 words under each H2 before any context. Old SEO-trained writers to bury the answer 400 words deep behind H2s. AEO inverts that completely.
Because the lead paragraph is what gets quoted.
And the new wrinkle the article mentions is that AI overviews want a slightly different paragraph shape than featured snippets did. More declarative, less SEO padded.
Because the model is composing, not just clipping. So the prose has to read like a confident statement of fact, not a setup for a longer pitch.
Right. And the article has a useful test for whether you're doing this. If a machine read your page and tried to answer, "What is X?" in one sentence, could it lift that sentence cleanly? If yes, you're AEO ready.
If it has to paraphrase across 3 paragraphs, you're probably not getting picked up.
Okay, now GEO. This is the weirder one, partly because the surface is invisible.
You can't open Search Console and see what ChatGPT said about you yesterday.
And the article makes the point that sometimes the model doesn't even retrieve. For some queries, it just generates from memory, whatever was in its training corpus.
Plus whatever fine-tuning and RLHF nudged it toward. Other times it does retrieve live, especially Perplexity, Gemini, and ChatGPT search.
Either way, you're not optimizing a single page. You're optimizing the model's internal map of your brand and category. So how do you even seed presence?
Off your domain, mostly. Reddit threads where your category is debated, Wikipedia if you can legitimately get there, comparison listicles on third-party sites, podcasts, and YouTube transcripts.
Wait, podcasts feed the corpus?
Transcripts do. The piece notes a 30-minute podcast appearance can be worth more than 10 guest blog posts.
Huh. That changes the calculus on which interview invites you say yes to.
It really does.
What else matters for GEO?
Brand co-occurrence. Consistent language so the model learns the association.
Because if your product is sometimes a writing assistant, sometimes a content tool, sometimes a generative platform, the model's signal smears. You have to pick one primary descriptor and use it everywhere.
Exactly. And then freshness for retrieval-augmented engines, since Perplexity and AI overviews lean hard on recency.
A 2026 piece on a 2026 topic outranks a 2022 evergreen on the same words. Got it. Now there's a debate in the article about whether these are really two disciplines at all. Profound says no.
They argued the industry should just standardize on AEO, that all the new acronyms confuse practitioners without adding clarity.
Half fair. Search Engine Land argued the opposite in their 2026 GEO guide, that the measurement surface, source mix, and time to impact are different enough that one strategy won't light up both. Where does the article land?
Same job at the tactic level, different jobs at the strategy level.
So a clean, factual paragraph helps both. But the strategic moves diverge. For AEO, you publish on your own domain with great schema. For GEO, you also need to be cited on Reddit, mentioned in Wikipedia, talked about in podcasts.
And the distribution channels for GEO don't belong to you.
Which is the painful part. AEO is a content problem. GEO is content plus distribution. Okay, let's get to the data that actually shocked me. The source diets. Where does each engine pull from?
This is the 5WPR 2026 Citation Source Index. 680 million citations from August 2024 through April 2026 across the 5 major engines.
680 million. That's a real data set. And the headline?
The top 15 domains capture roughly 68% of all citation share.
68% in 15 domains. That's a steeper power law than classic search.
Way steeper. The AI web is much more concentrated than 10 blue links Google ever was.
So most of the AI web is being written by basically the same handful of sources. That alone reshapes how you think about distribution.
And the diets per engine are wildly different. Reddit drives roughly 40% of Perplexity citations.
40%. So Perplexity is, for a lot of queries, basically Reddit with a synthesis wrapper on top.
Pretty close to that. Then, Wikipedia accounts for 26 to 48% of ChatGPT citations.
That's a huge range. The implication is the same either way, though, right? If you're not on Wikipedia in your category, you feel invisible inside ChatGPT.
Right. And Claude leans hard on legacy journalism. New York Times, Atlantic, BBC, Academic Press. Depth beats breadth.
And Gemini and Google AI Overviews both mirror page 1 organic pretty closely. So classic SEO still drives most of that visibility.
Discovered Labs had a great frame for it. ChatGPT wants consensus. Claude wants depth. Perplexity wants community validation.
Once you see it like that, it's hard to unsee. So if a team spent 2025 publishing strong SEO on their own domain, where do they stand across the 5 engines?
Decent in Gemini and AI Overviews. Modest in Claude. Almost nothing in Perplexity or ChatGPT, unless the brand also lives on Reddit and Wikipedia.
Which explains why founders open AI search dashboards and panic. Their content is fine. The engines they care about still don't quote them. The mismatch is the whole story.
And the fix isn't usually more blog posts. It's getting cited somewhere you don't own.
Right. Now, here's the part I think a lot of people are misreading. Citations are not visits.
Should be tattooed on every marketer's monitor in 2026.
Ahrefs measured a 58% click reduction on queries where AI overviews appear back in December 2025. That's brutal.
And Seer Interactive saw similar patterns across hundreds of clients. Informational queries lost the most. Transactional held up better.
Then Chartbeat had the kicker in March 2026, telling Nieman Lab that AI sources drive less than 1% of publisher page views.
Wait, under 1%.
Under 1. So read those together. Clicks from classic search are falling fast. Clicks from AI search aren't replacing them. the traffic is just leaving.
For brand awareness queries, that's survivable. A citation inside ChatGPT can still shape someone's mental model.
But for commerce and lead gen, it's a real problem. You can be the most cited brand in your vertical inside ChatGPT and see almost none of it in revenue.
That's the citation illusion. The dashboard says you're winning. The bank account disagrees.
Plan accordingly. Okay, let's switch to action. AEO tactics. If someone wants to ship this sprint, what's the shortlist?
Add all the schema. FAQ schema, how-to, article with author and publish date, and organization on the homepage.
And then test it in Google's rich results tool to confirm the markup actually parses.
Right. Schema is one of the few channels where structured data still gives a measurable lift, so it's worth doing properly.
Then write the answer first, 40 to 60 words under each H2 before any expansion.
Question-led H2s. How much does it cost instead of pricing?
Author authority. Real bylines, linked author pages, a same as schema field pointing to LinkedIn or an academic profile. The article notes AI overviews disproportionately quote bylined content over anonymous SEO.
Anchor links and table of contents. Those give engines clean semantic chunk boundaries.
Refresh dates that mean something. A date modified that updates weekly with no real change gets discounted. Don't fake the freshness.
And cite primary sources. Link to the original study, not a third blog. Engines trace citation graphs and reward terminal nodes.
In Next.js or any modern framework, most of that is 20 lines of JSON LD. There's basically no reason not to ship it.
Now geotactics. Harder, because most of the work is off your domain.
Start with Wikipedia. Carefully. Don't write your own article. It gets deleted. Build real notability through press first. Then let an experienced editor draft a neutral entry.
Because Wikipedia is 26 to 48% of ChatGPT citations. Absence is a near permanent disadvantage.
Reddit, but not by spamming, by being genuinely useful in the threads where your category is debated.
One substantive comment in a high-traffic SaaS subreddit can outpull a year of blog SEO inside Perplexity.
Earn comparison content. Best X for Y listicles on third-party sites. Models lean on listicles because they're structured and resolve uncertainty fast.
Pitch journalists. Contribute primary data. Do real interviews.
And publish your own structured comparisons too. Even though most GeoWeight is off-domain, your comparison tables and glossary pages help when the model does retrieve.
So you're playing both sides at once. Be a clean source when the model retrieves, and be a known name when it generates from memory.
Then the consistent brand descriptor we talked about, plus podcasts and YouTube transcripts.
And feed the freshness layer for retrieval engines. Publish dated content on emerging topics within days, not months. Late mover content rarely surfaces.
The mental model the piece offers is sharp. AEO is what you publish. GEO is what's published about you.
And that's why GEO is a distribution problem in disguise.
Okay, the analytics stack. Because there's now a whole tools category racing to define this.
Profound raised a $96 million Series C at a roughly $1 billion valuation in February 2026.
$96 million for a category that didn't exist 18 months ago. That's the kind of round that tells you investors think this is structural, not faddish.
Otterly claims more than 20,000 marketers on its platform. Goody and Athena HQ are also pulling in funding.
And the job they do is what, exactly? Just running queries on a schedule?
Run thousands of queries through ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, and AI overviews. Log which brands and URLs get cited. Turn that into a dashboard with benchmarks and source breakdowns.
Are they worth paying for?
Depends on stakes. Enterprise brand, yes. Series A or B startup, probably not yet. Solo founder or creator, no.
And the DIY version covers most of the value.
Once a month, 10 queries that matter to your category. 5 informational, 3 comparative, 2 transactional. Run them through the 5 engines. Log every brand and URL in a spreadsheet. Track delta.
And here's the wild stat that makes the DIY case. HubSpot says only 14% of marketers track AI citation metrics at all.
14. 86% of marketers are completely flying blind.
So you don't need a $20,000 a year tool to be in the top quintile. You need a spreadsheet and an hour a month.
That alone gets you ahead of almost everyone in your category.
Cheapest competitive advantage of the year, honestly. And the bar is so low that even doing it imperfectly puts you in rare company.
And almost nobody is doing it.
Let's zoom out. The article ends on this idea of two eligibility surfaces. Walk me through that frame.
Training corpus eligibility is slow and accumulative, 6 to 18-month horizon. Wins are durable but invisible day to day.
So you earn it by existing in the open web in citable forms before the next model snapshot. And retrieval eligibility?
Faster, more responsive, closer to classic SEO. Fresh content, good schema, clean structure, trustworthy bylines. Horizon is days to weeks.
Measurable but volatile. So they reward different content moves too.
Training corpus rewards being a primary source. Original data, named methodology, frameworks people quote. Retrieval rewards being a clean destination.
Teams that fail in AI search usually pick one and ignore the other. They either overpublish on their own domain and never get cited externally, or they chase Reddit and Wikipedia without bothering to make their own pages quotable.
And both halves of that are correctable, but it takes admitting they're separate jobs.
Which is the trap. Treating AEO and GEO as just classic SEO with a new acronym.
Right, SEO optimized against a ranking algorithm. AEO is for extraction, so the page has to be machine quotable, not just machine readable. GEO is for synthesis, so the brand has to be machine recallable.
Which is corpus presence, not page presence. One last thing, Adam. The piece notes every tactic in here has a maximum useful lifetime, probably measured in quarters. So how much of this advice do you actually trust 6 months out?
Honest answer is the tactics will drift. What works in AI overviews today is already being tuned out. Reddit's signal in Perplexity will erode as community trust gets gamed. Wikipedia policies will tighten.
So nobody should treat any single tactic as a permanent playbook. It's more like a portfolio. You keep rebalancing.
Right. The real win isn't picking AEO or GEO. It's understanding both as design constraints on how content and brand presence get built. Then keep editing the playbook as the surfaces move.
And measure what's actually moving the business, not what looks good on a dashboard.
That last part is the hard one. The dashboards are getting prettier faster than the attribution is getting clearer.
Today's takeaway. The search surface has split in two, and they reward almost opposite signals. Write so machines can quote you, get talked about so machines can recall you, and measure share of voice inside answers, not just sessions in analytics.
And ignore anyone selling you a single tactic. Run both playbooks at once.
Want to go deeper? Full articles on glass.co. Just search AEO versus GEO.
See you in the next deep dive.